Hello and welcome to another jungle tutorial and the first of our Season 9 Rank Up Champion guides. We're going to start off this preseason the same way we started the last, and that's with Evelynn. Some rune adjustments have dropped, rune shards have been added, Camille still exists, and with that Evelynn has gone through a cycle of changes and adaptations over the course of the past year. In this guide, we will talk about Season 9 rune options, followed by a recap and rundown of how to best make use of her abilities in skill order, some first clear options, items, and additional general gameplay mechanics that can help you 1v9 with Evelynn in this preseason to get you ready for your push in Season 9. Evelynn has a unique carry potential in solo queue because, especially in lower MMRs, games will become somewhat chaotic where at some point in the game people will be split from their team, over pushing, not paying attention to vision lines, and that is a prime time for you to go make a pick, get one or two people down, and from there you can secure objectives and actually, round out the win. Or just keep killing people if that's what you want to do. So with that in mind, let's start off by talking about the new runes and the changes to Dark Harvest. Now, we aren't able to do things like this play anymore where we get auto resets and insane stacking. The 45-second base cooldown and 1.5-second cooldown on takedowns, plus the hotfix nerf to Dark Harvest has definitely reduced its damage, and the way it is now even sees a lot of laners taking it, so it's something to keep an eye on. But nonetheless, even after the first round of old Harvest nerfs a while back, Electric Q came back as a strong option, and I do prefer to use it as my primary option now. And in comparison to the new Dark Harvest, it does give you a much more safe and guaranteed rune that scales significantly better later on for isolated pick advantages. The damage is insanely high, it has a higher AP ratio and scaling than Harvest, and so even if you are behind, at some point you will be able to do damage. And mathematically, you will need a lot of stacks on the Harvest to make up those damages on Electrocute as the game goes on, and that just isn't guaranteed. So I definitely prefer going Electrocute, and after doing some preseason testing this week, that backs up my feelings on it. Now for the rest of my rune page, that's pretty much as standard, including the ever valuable movement speed from Relentless Hunter. And now, given the nature of secondary rune page changes because of the rune shards, along with the destruction of celerity, I've taken to putting absolute focus on my secondary rune page. It's something I enjoy running on my Shadow Assassin Kayn build, and it works just as well on Evelynn because coming from stealth with up to 40 AP on a very high scaling damage assassin, well, you're probably going to have a fun time with that. Now you couple this with the fact that your passive will regenerate you out of combat, and you'll have that absolute focus up again in no time. Now, Water Walking might be a fantastic second option for a higher ranked player looking for more river scuttle control and skirmish power, but I still enjoy running Gathering the Storm, and especially recommended for lower MMR players where almost certainly the scaling AP plus absolute focus will give you carry potential every game, as neither team will probably be able to close effectively or efficiently. Now, because of the rune shards, out of interest, I also tried running different pages, and one I liked was where you go Presence of Mind and you switch Relentless Hunter to Ultimate Hunter. This gives you a unique short cooldown for your ultimate in the later stages of the game, and is definitely something different to play with now that we have this option. Most of the time you will be going with 2x adaptive and scaling HP on Evelynn, but feel free to adjust that depending on enemy team comps with your AD and magic resist as necessary. So with the Season 9 specifics out of the way, let's move on to her abilities and revisit the power that we can have with Evelynn. We will also talk about combos and uses and ganking as we go through this. So we already mentioned her passive that gives her that out of combat health regeneration, which is great throughout the different phases of the game, but it also gives her that camouflage when she hits level 6, and the versatility of which will be discussed in the context of the rest of her gameplay. So, Hate Spikes, this is her Q and the quintessential Evelynn ability, thus you max it first, and it's largely carried over from before her rework. It's her most spammable ability and used to clear the jungle fast and efficiently, given that it also gives a reduced cooldown when you hit monsters with the first proc of the Q. Once you do hit a target, you can proc it 3 more times and the hate spikes will fly out towards a target or the nearest enemy if they have left the range, and it damages everything that it passes through, which makes it the key form of activating your W charm for the full combo. It's worth noting that the first enemy it hits does take bonus magic damage thereafter from her next 3 abilities or basic attacks. So even if you miss the Q like I always make fun of myself for doing, the hate spikes will still proc to the nearest enemy so you can get those cleanup kills, but you will be missing that bonus damage you get by hitting the dart. So the amount of damage you dish out with this can be very underrated, but don't be afraid to move in and out to impale as many bears as you can in crucial team fights, because you never know if you might grab a kill that can actually turn the tides of a game. People only think of it as a clearing tool instead of an actual combat tool. Now, her W is absolutely core to your success as Evelynn insofar as you understand how it works. It exists over the course of 5 seconds, but it's fully charged after 2.5. This gives you another 2.5 second window to hit a spell or auto attack and trigger a magic resist shred hard CC ability. You can see that the magic resistance reduction is percentage based, which means it's a great tank shredding tool. The charging time is really something that even to this day still can confuse enemies and bait them into fights even if you miss your Q. They think they've gotten out safely, but at the last moment you can hit an auto attack, an E or anything that procs that hard stun even at the last moment. Yes, it is something that you can use for misdirection or zoning as I discussed in my teamfighting video, but it can guarantee up to 2 seconds of hard CC, so it's something you definitely want to use efficiently. If you proc before the 2.5 second cutoff though, you will simply slow the enemy champion and you'll have to use your best judgment as to when that's the case, like with this Warwick example. If I had waited for it to charge up, he might have had another Q up to kill my Rumble, and so instead I slow him, which forces him to retreat, and we can pick up first blood. Now, in terms of maxing it second or third, I still like to max W second purely because it gives you that range increase for activation, which lets me move around it a lot more because you want to position very well. When you're revealing that W, you want to be behind, you want to be flanking, you want to be in a position that lets you cut off their dash or flash so that you can still hit that hard charm. Running at their face isn't always the best way to do it, but with an increased range, it gives me a bit more versatility in terms of where I move in and when I can activate it. You also increase the stun time up to 2 seconds, which gives me more of a window to use my Q procs as well as my ult before they can actually try and escape the situation. And if that wasn't enough, it also gives more bonus damage and a lower cooldown, so clearing camps becomes super fast as well. However, your E does give percentage max HP damage based upon your own AP and is empowered when you are in Demon Shade, and thus crucial to when you have camo, as it features a small dash, and this dash, like Virkayu and Virkayu, will allow you to follow with someone. It's a tether, but it's a short range one, and you can see here with Zed it can kind of have a funny interaction, and it's much harder to do intentionally given the small range, but because the empowered Whiplash when you are in Demon Shade does have that dash, it is your primary gap closer. Now in addition, this ability also applies on hit effects, so you will get the added damage from Lichbane, and this is how you burst down your targets. You activate that full W charm, you use Q to proc the bonus damage, you E in with your Lichbane and passive, also while following up with your hate spikes. The E gives you that percentage max HP damage, and that equals a very dead champion, oftentimes not even needing the full combo. If you do decide to max E instead of W, the damage that can come out of it can be very deceptive, and in combination with the Lichbane can be quite devastating without even using the W. And if that's something you prefer to use as a chase down or a zoning tool and don't like it in your natural in and out gameplay, then that is also a thing you can do instead of maxing W second. And finally, as you see me use my Q and E in this example, I'm able to avoid a Scion Q because the E gives me a 30% bonus MS boost after you use it, and that can really affect your in-fight presence. Coupled with the fact that even though it applies single target effects, it does also have an AoE effect applied to secondary targets. So if you're looking for that flash E Q combo without even using W, you might see a lot of damage go out to surrounding targets, and that's why that's happening. You know, in addition to the first person you wanted to hit just instantly dying. Now her ultimate is called Last Caress and is a great near execute, disengage tool, and gap closer. Although I really use it as the latter, as I find it way too crucial to use in team fights and for executes, where you have to be very timely in when and how you use it and to maximize your damage output than to necessarily use it while just chasing people down. So just pay attention to when the ult is up, the bonus damage symbol that will show up on relevant targets, and remember it also makes you untargetable, so you can use it to avoid crucial spells, escape dangerous situations, and of course get out of tower dives with kills while also dropping that aggro. Some standard combos don't have to involve using W as we have mentioned before in ganks and fights, but it is the vital engage tool, so I'll focus on that for the moment. Now from here you want to double proc your Q as much as possible and then ult out. The combo without the ultimate can be used pre-6 but is harder to execute given that you won't have that empowered whiplash as often. However, you should still be able to burn easy flashes because of the threat of the W, and you can exploit any enemies that do not have that flash up in your ganks. And as soon as you are 6, now the fun begins. You have access to your full kit. No one can see you unless they have those control wards down, and if you become remotely fed, people will flash even at the sight of you or even at the threat of an engage. So remember to cheese opponents who are very lazy with their backs in that situation, who have used their summoner spells to beat you out or to escape from your kill. You can easily follow them up with a little bit of a delay and secure that kill. Cheesing opponents with your camo, flanking them from the sides, cutting people off, invading enemy junglers, all of this is a part of carrying with Evelynn. You don't want to use your camo lazily. And so with that said, let's go straight into the first clear, right back to the beginning, and it is quite straightforward given how healthy Evelynn can remain, and so you have the choice of map pressure or efficient level 6 farming. You can do the clear we talked about in the jungle roots video in the mid-season, or if you don't want to leash and you want to be a bit more hidden about where you started, you can go straight to the raptors, into the red, into the krugs, and then look to gank mid or top after, maybe secure scuttle. Or you can do a full clear by starting on the red, krugs, into raptors, but that is a bit more useful in the higher ups where you want to have a good idea of the enemy's jungle path in clear time, and you want to maximize your farming efficiency and impacting the game as soon as possible with your level 6 pressure. Of course, you also have the option of starting in the blue buff, taking Grump, getting that scuttle, maybe ganking level 3. You have a few options. These are all viable for you. Not one is better than the other. You have to adapt to the beginning of the game. The main thing is in lower MMRs, you could do a full clear, you could do whatever you want, because most people forget there are 2 crabs and they're not really thinking about that early level pressure, they're just thinking farming. But you do want to impact the map a bit more, so taking a clear route that lets you get off a gank early game to burn flashes, to give your laner any advantage whatsoever, is very useful. You can invade as Evelynn on unsuspecting targets, but be aware you have no dashes to escape easily, so watch that lane priority if you do. Whichever route you choose based upon matchups and early river wards, make sure you have that game plan ready and you're kiting camps as well as you can, hitting your Qs to get to shorten CDR, and you want to spam that as much as possible with Talisman to stay healthy. Now regarding itemization, Evelynn is definitely not complex, and in the context of the AP changes early in the year, definitely streamlined her build path. I mentioned Lichbane Rush when the rework came out, people didn't like it, they're all about the proto belt, but now it's the standard way to build her. Why? Because movement speed, AP, sheen on hit effects, cooldown, everything you need to synergize with your burst combo in order to deal maximum damage at that one item power spike. There are some Spellbinder Rush builds, of course all of this after Runic Echoes, but it's not really my playstyle, and I think Lichbane provides an affordable and effective build path where you can get that Blasting Wand and Wisp for raw AP and early game movement speed. Now, most often I will buy Blue Smite with a Dark Seal early game because of how hard Evelynn scales, but if I'm going to be versus a Kha'Zix or a Xin, I will grab that Red Smite for dueling, but 90% of the time you're looking to not engage in an early game fistfight with them, and the Blue Smite gives you that slow and damage which can help land Ws and also give you a gap closer to hit your empowered Whiplash. After these 2 items you do have some choices, but those core choices will usually be Deathcap, Morello's, and Void Staff. I've often been going Deathcap first in Fed games, especially versus squishy teams, as the raw AP in conjunction with W means that people will just insta-die. If you're behind or neutral in the game and versus some MR building enemies, perhaps some healing like Akali, then Morello's is the ideal follow-up to Lichbane and matches nicely with her entire Magic Pen ability kit. Now don't forget to situationally itemize either. Oftentimes you will need that Zhonya's, and if you're versus Morgana Lux and something of that nature, a Banshee's Veil can be very useful, but it's not something I can say I often build, just worth keeping in mind. Most often I will say I have a situation where I want that Zhonya's for teamfight survivability instead of the Morello's or Void Staff situationally, but most important, you must dynamically itemize based upon how fed you are and who the enemy team comp actually is. Now, some gameplay patterns for Evelynn with all of that in mind. In every game, you will have that vital moment where you can grab yourself 2-3 kills in a skirmish, and that lets you begin your snowball. It's absolutely vital you have an even or strong early game, and it's largely in your own control. Don't face check bushes against Rengars, be smart about your pathing. If you need to be defensive to farm, be defensive until 6, and always look to flank from behind or at angles that will allow your W to fully charge so you can hit it for your full combo, or at the very least burn a flash and then you can rotate around and do it again. You also need to be acutely aware of wards in general, specifically control wards, because nothing makes people control ward more than when you're post 6 fed Evelynn in camouflage. And yes, when Evelynn is against you, your team will conveniently forget to buy any control wards. Look to abuse flashes you've burned or that are down and attempt multiple ganks while weaving in farm. Your clear speed is extremely good and only gets faster with Q max and some early items. Once you have access to your ultimate, you have the ability to maneuver around the map with ease as well as speed. Evelynn is extremely successful at lane ganks as well as remaining in lane after a gank because of the camo, so apply unprecedented pressure whenever you can. Now her W does work best on a CC lane, so if you have a lane with good CC, say a Leona, Morgana that can hit those skill shots, then you can follow up with your W, and that chain CC with your burst damage will guarantee that someone dies for an easy kill. This is important in any gank or any lane in general, but even more so with Evelynn given the nature of her raw damage. And when it comes to that mid and late game, Evelynn thrives at just taking someone off the map instantly and giving your team a 4v5 or 3v5 advantage because of how punishing you are to anyone that's out of position. The key here is to make sure that after you make these big picks that you and your team are focusing on taking objectives afterwards. You can always hang around lanes and punish anyone that extends beyond the vision line of their team. Abuse bad vision, abuse their ignorance. Now, teamfighting requires a much more nuanced approach, but I have made a fully detailed guide on teamfighting as an assassin, which pretty much 99% focuses on Evelynn, so might as well be an Evelynn teamfighting guide, but go look at that if you want to maximize your presence in that particular area. With Evelynn, you can single-handedly force your team back into the game through smart positioning, farming routes, disturbing damage in teamfights, and basically tormenting their minds, wondering where you're going to be. Thank you very much for watching. Please like, share, and comment if you enjoyed. Consider joining on YouTube to officially sub to the channel and gain access to perks. Subscribe for more Season 9 jungle guides coming very soon. And as always, I will see you all in the next tutorial.